Hello everyone, this is part 6 on how to make a tower defense game in Scratch. In this tutorial, I will create an enemy wave system, which includes a wave start button and a wave counter, and I'll also make some small improvements to the turret and fix some bugs. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 5 yet, check them out, links are in the description below. Anyways, let's get started. So currently, all of the enemies spawn once we click the green flag. However, I sort of want to create a start wave button and also a wave system where we can spawn waves of enemies. So to do that, I'll begin by creating a start wave button. So I'll create a new sprite, and inside of the costumes, I'll make a circle. And by the way, I will shift click to create a perfect circle, and then I'll center this, and I'll keep the black outline, but I might make it a bit larger, so maybe an outline size of 7, and I'll have a gray fill. Alright, and then inside of the circle I'll make a rectangle, but I'll delete one of these points to make a triangle to show the play button, and I'll drag this somewhere in the center of the circle, and I think that should be fine. I might also make the fill a white color. And alright, so here is our simple start wave button, and I'll name the sprite. Alright, and now let's go inside of the code. So first off, I'm going to drag a when flag clicked, and then I'm going to make the button go somewhere over here. Alright, and I'll make the button a bit smaller actually, so I'll set the size to something like 50%, okay, maybe 60. Alright, I think 60 is fine, and then I'll move it over here. Okay, so this is going to be our start wave button, and that's on an X position of -216 and Y position of 157. Alright. And I'll also add some mouse over effects. So I'm going to drag a forever loop, and inside of the forever loop I'm going to drag an if else, and then I'll go to sensing and check if the button sprite is touching the mouse pointer. Then I'm going to go to looks, and I'm going to set the brightness effect to something like, let's say -10, so that makes the entire sprite a bit darker. Else I will set the brightness effect back to normal, so that's 0. And now if we try it out, once we hover over this button, then it becomes slightly darker. Alright, and now I'm going to also drag an if statement and put this inside of the if touching mouse pointer. So I'm going to check if the mouse is touching the button and the mouse is down. That means that we want to start the next wave. So to do that, I'm going to go inside of the events and actually broadcast a new message. So in this case, I'm going to broadcast, I'll call this something like new wave, and then click OK. Alright, and I also want to grab a wait until block after the new wave and check that the mouse is not down. So I'm going to right click duplicate this mouse down and drag this inside of the not. And now we should have a button that every time you click on it broadcasts the new wave message. So now of course we want the enemies to spawn once we click this button. So inside of the enemy sprite, I am actually going to create a new variable, and I'll call this wave, and then click OK. And inside of the when flag clicked, I'm going to first set this wave variable to 0. And I'm going to make it so that the first enemies spawn on wave 1, and then more enemies will spawn on wave 2, and so on. So to do that, I am going to go to Control and grab a wait until block, and I'll drag this right before we do the spawn enemy blocks. So right before all of these blocks, I will wait until the wave is equal to 1. So grab an equals to operator, and then I'm going to drag the wave variable in the left side, and I'll type in 1. Alright, so since we set the wave to 0 when the flag is clicked, that means that no enemies will spawn. However, I want to make it so that once I click on this button, then the wave will change to 1. So inside of the start wave button sprite, once the mouse is down, then I will change the wave by 1. So if we click on this button, then as you can see, these enemies spawn because the wave is equal to 1. However, one problem is that I can keep on clicking this wave button, and then the wave will keep on increasing by 1. However, I want to make it so that I can only start the next wave once the wave is done spawning and all the enemies are destroyed. So to do that, I have to first create another new variable, and I'll call this something like can begin next wave, and then click OK. And first, when the flag is clicked, of course we can start wave 1, so I'm going to set can begin next wave to yes. However, once we click on that start wave button, we have to set can begin next wave to no, because we don't want the player to be able to start the next wave right after we clicked the start wave button. And by the way, I'm actually going to just drag these two variables inside of their own when I receive new wave. So go to control, or actually events, sorry, and then drag a when I receive new wave. Alright, and this is just the same thing as this, but I think it just makes it more clear. So I'm going to have these by their own. And now inside of the forever loop, I am going to grab an if else, and I'm going to drag this current if else inside of this if, and then I'm going to drag it back. And then in the outer if else statement, I'm going to check if can begin next wave is equal to yes. Then of course I'm going to check if the button is touching the mouse pointer and if the mouse pointer is down. Alright, so now if we try it out, then as you can see, the can begin next wave is equal to yes, and if I click on the button, then can begin next wave is equal to no, and then I cannot increase the wave anymore. Alright, cool. So now if we try it out, if we click the start wave button, then the enemies spawn, and we can play our game like normal. So now we want to make it so that once all the enemies are done spawning, and also once all the enemies are destroyed, then we can begin the next wave, because right now we can only play one wave. So to do that, we have to create a variable in the enemy sprite that checks whether the enemies are done spawning. So inside of the enemy sprite, I'm going to create a new variable, and I'll call this one done spawning, and then I'll click OK. And inside the enemy, I'm going to go to events and drag a when I receive new wave. And then inside of here, I'm going to set done spawning to no. Alright, and then of course, once we finished all of these spawn enemy blocks, then we want to set done spawning to yes. So set done spawning to yes. Alright, so now inside of the start wave button, once we have started the wave, we want to check inside of this else. So I'm going to grab an if, and we want to check if all of the enemies are done spawning, and if there are no more enemies left on the map, then we can start the next wave. So I'm going to grab an AND operator, and then drag this inside of the if, and I'm going to drag an equals operator, and check if done spawning is equal to yes, which means that all the enemies have spawned on the map, and if there are no more enemies left on the map. So for this one, I'm going to also grab an equals operator, and inside of the variables, I'm going to scroll down and actually go to the length of enemy IDs block inside of the lists, and then put this on the left side. And remember, whenever an enemy is created, it adds its clone number to the enemy IDs list, and then whenever an enemy is destroyed, it removes its clue number from the enemy IDs list. So if the length of the enemy IDs list is equal to 0, that means that there are no more enemies on the map. And then we can lastly set can begin next wave to yes, which means that we can again click the button to start the next wave. Alright, so now if we try it out, right now it's wave 0, and then can begin next wave is yes. And then once we click the button, then the wave is 1, and can begin next wave is no, so we cannot change the wave. However, once all of the enemies are destroyed, and once all of the enemies are done spawning, then we should be able to begin the next wave. So let's try it out. And alright, as you can see, the wave is now 2, and can begin next wave is equal to no. And by the way, no enemies are spawning because we have not told the enemies to spawn when the wave is equal to 2. So to make some enemies spawn on wave 2, we can just right click and duplicate this wait until wave equals to 1, and then change this to wave equals to 2. And then we can just drag this right after the end of this block. And to make the waves a bit different, for wave 1, I'm not going to have any of these fast enemies, and I'm going to only have like 10 normal ones. And then for wave 2, I'm going to just have like 10 normal and 10 fast ones. Alright, cool. And before we try the game out again, I just want to make a few more changes. So first off, I'm going to drag all of these delete all of lists under the when I receive new wave. And this just makes sure that all the lists are empty once we spawn a new wave. And I also want to set the clone number to 0 under the when I receive new wave. And I think that should be fine. Okay. And just in case, I'm going to go to control and drag a wait 1 seconds block and change this to something like 0.1 seconds. And then drag this right before any enemies are spawned in each wave. And this just ensures that all of these variables are reset before we start spawning the new enemies. Alright, and then inside of the start wave button, I also want to make a few more changes. So right now, if we start a new wave, we can't really tell if we can still click the button or not. But I want to make it really clear that we are unable to click the button when a wave is being spawned. So inside of the looks, I'm going to grab a set and change this to brightness to, I'll try something like negative 35. And then I'll drag this after the when I receive new wave. And I think that should be fine. So if we try it out, once we click this button, then as you can see, it's really dark, which means that we cannot start the next wave. However, once all the enemies are destroyed, then we should be able to, as you can see, start the next wave. So now we can click on it again, and now we're on wave 2, and wave 2's enemies should spawn. So alright, here are the yellow ones, and there we go. So once all of them are destroyed, then the button becomes bright again, and then we can start the next wave. So now I think our wave system should be complete. I'm going to create one more wave. So I'm going to right click duplicate this wait until block. And then, oh yeah, oops. I meant to say wait 0.1 seconds, not 1 seconds. Okay. And then I'm going to change this to wait until wave equals to 3. And then for this wave, I'll spawn like 20 normal ones and 20 fast ones, maybe with a faster delay. So I'm going to type in maybe something like 0.25 and 0.15. Alright, so let's try it out. So if we begin, then we have wave 1. Alright. And then once all the enemies are destroyed, then we can start wave 2. And alright, there are the yellow ones. And the wave system should still work even if some reach the end. So let's see. Okay. And alright, cool. So the button is now bright again. So we can click on it and then start wave 3. All right. And it seems like everything works. Awesome. And yeah. Okay, so now that we have our wave system down, I sort of want a wave counter over here rather than this variable. So I'm going to create a new sprite, and I'll type something like a wave. Okay, I'll make this a black fill, and I'm going to move this text over here. All right, so that's x negative 158 and y 156. And then I'll drag a when flag clicked. And I'm going to actually first hide it when the flag is clicked. However, once we start a new wave, then I'll show this text. So inside of events, I'm going to drag when I receive new wave. Then I will show the wave text. So grab a show. All right. And that should be it for this. However, I also want to create a wave counter sprite that shows the current wave that we are on. So I'm going to create a new variable. And oh yeah, I'm going to first name this wave number, and then I'll name this one wave text. Okay, so inside of the wave number sprite, I'm going to first go to the costumes and then create the digits 1 through 9 and then 0. All right, and then I'm also going to name these costumes from 1 through 9 and then 0. All right, so these are all of the costumes for our number counter sprite. And then inside of the code, I'm going to first go to events and grab a when flag clicked. Then I'm going to hide the sprite. And then I'm going to go to variables and create a new variable. And I'll call this something like digits. And then make sure for this one to select for this sprite only. And then click OK. All right. So when the flag is clicked, I'm going to first set digits to 0, and then inside of the control, I'm going to repeat and then change digits by 1, and also create clone of myself. And I'm also going to only repeat, let's say like 3 instead of 10. And what I'm planning to do is that I'm going to have these 3 clones represent the ones digit, the tens digit, and the hundreds digit. And then I'm going to have these clones show or hide and also switch costume based on the number that we have in this variable right here. So I'm going to drag a when a star is a clone, and then first of all I'm going to go to motion and drag a go to XY block, and I'm going to make the numbers start somewhere right around here. So that's around x negative 113 and y 156. However, we want the ones, tens, and hundreds digits to be all spaced apart, but right now they're all at the exact same x position. So to fix this, let's go to operators, and then I'm going to drag a plus operator, and then I'm also going to drag a multiplication operator and drag this on the right side. And inside of the multiplication operator, I'm going to drag the digits variable, and I'm going to multiply this by something like, let's try 12. And then on the left side of this plus, I'm going to type in the negative 113. All right, cool. And now I'm going to go to control and grab a for loop. And then I'm going to grab an if else. And then I'm going to go to operators and grab a greater than operator and check if the digits is greater than the length of the wave variable. So I'm going to go to operators and grab a length of block, and go to variables and drag the wave variable. All right, so let's say that we're on wave 7. Then we want the tens and hundreds digits to hide. So inside of this if, we want to hide if the own clone's digits variable is greater than the length of wave. Else, we want to show the clone and also switch the costume of the clone to go to operators. Let's grab a letter 1 of Apple block and then drag this inside of the switch costume to. and switch costume to letter digits of wave. Alright, so now the sprite should correctly show the wave. So if we try it out, then once we click, then as you can see, the sprite goes to 1 and the wave is 1. Alright, cool. And then if we go to the second wave, then the number counter should show 2, and it does. Alright, cool. And let's say we set the wave to something like 55 or like 59. Then the number, as you can see, should show 59. Alright, so now that our number counter works, I want to move it to the left a bit, so I'll make it go to x maybe negative 130. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Maybe negative 129. Alright, cool. And lastly, I also want to hide the 0 when the flag is clicked. So I'm going to actually go to Control and then drag a wait until block and put it right before the forever loop. And I'm going to grab an equals to operator and then drag the wave variable on the left side and check until the wave equals to 1. Then I'm going to show or hide the clones. So I believe the 0 should hide when I click the green flag. And alright, cool. And then if we start the wave, then the wave counter shows up. Alright, nice. Now let's test it out. So once we click again, then it becomes wave 2. Alright. And then after this wave, it should become wave 3. And it does. So now that we're done with the wave system and the wave counter, I'm going to make a quick change to the turret. So inside of the costumes of the turret sprite, in the firing image, I'm going to actually move this image to the left a tiny bit. And that makes the turret firing animation look a lot better. So if we try it out, then if a turret shoots, then it sort of recoils like that. And it's a really small change, but I think it looks pretty good. And oh yeah, one thing I forgot to do is that we actually want to duplicate all of these delete all of lists block and then drag this right after the win flag clicked. And that just makes sure that all the lists from the last game are cleared when we start the new game. Anyways, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe too if you haven't already. In the next video, I'll begin working on a shop to purchase turrets. By the way, this project is shared on my Scratch profile. Link is in the description below. Anyways, that's it for this video. See ya!